My name is Clara, and at 33 years old, I never imagined I'd be changing the locks on my own house while my husband and his mother stood on the porch in shock. For 3 years, I'd been called obsessed with money and cold for simply asking who was paying the bills in what everyone kept calling his mother's house. But the night my husband screamed at me not to argue with his mom in her house, something inside me went very still and very clear. What happened next taught me that sometimes the most expensive thing you can pay for isn't a mortgage, it's your own peace of mind. If you're watching this, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story about family, money, and the power of knowing your worth is one you won't want to miss. The moving truck pulled away just as the sun dipped below the roofline, casting the Victorian house in amber light. I stood on the front lawn, boxes stacked behind me, and felt something I couldn't quite name. Pride, maybe. Or hope. Ethan wrapped his arm around my waist and kissed my temple. "Home sweet home," he whispered. I leaned into him, breathing in the scent of his cologne mixed with cardboard dust. "Just for a little while, right? Until we save enough." "Of course." His grip tightened. "Mom's so excited to have us here. You know how she gets lonely in this big place." Margaret appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the warm glow from inside. Even from a distance, I could see her perfectly coiffed silver hair and the crisp lines of her blouse. She waved, all smiles and open arms. Come in, come in. I've made pot roast." "Clara, darling, you must be exhausted." The word darling landed with the weight of a promise I hadn't agreed to keep. That first week, I told myself this was temporary. A smart financial move. Ethan's childhood home sat in a beautiful neighborhood with mature trees and quiet streets. Margaret had rattled around in it alone since Ethan's father passed 5 years ago. The mortgage was manageable, the utilities reasonable. When she'd suggested we move in just until you two get on your feet, it had seemed almost generous. I should have noticed the way she said "my house" in every other sentence. Should have caught how she introduced me to neighbors as Ethan's wife, staying with us for now. But I was busy. My promotion at the marketing firm had come through just before the move, bringing a substantial raise and new responsibilities. I worked late most nights, grateful for the career momentum, telling myself the extra income would speed our departure. The bills started arriving in my name almost immediately. "Oh, honey, could you handle the electric this month?" Ethan asked one morning, coffee in hand, scrolling through his phone. "I'm a little short. That golf weekend with the guys cleaned me out." "Sure," I said, already reaching for my purse. "But we should set up a system. Split things evenly. We're married, Clara. What's mine is yours, right?" He kissed my forehead and was out the door before I could respond. The water bill came next. Then the gas. Then the mortgage payment. Somehow, during the refinancing process that Margaret had insisted on to get a better rate, my name had ended up as the primary borrower. I'd signed the papers in a rush between meetings, trusting that this was just paperwork, just family taking care of family. "It's better for the interest rate if we use your credit score," Margaret had explained, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she slid the documents across her dining table. "Yours is higher than Ethan's. Just makes financial sense, dear." I'd signed. And signed again. And initialed there and there. Now, 3 months in, I was paying nearly everything. The mortgage, the utilities, the internet, the property taxes that came due with alarming frequency. I filled the refrigerator every week with groceries that disappeared before I could plan meals. Ethan's contributions were sporadic at best. $50 here, $100 there, always with an apologetic smile and a promise to do better next month. "You're obsessed with money," he'd said last week when I tried to bring up the budget spreadsheet I'd created. "It's not attractive, Clara. We're building a life together. Stop being so transactional." I closed the laptop and said nothing. Margaret had her own way of making me feel like a guest in what was increasingly becoming my house in everything but acknowledgement. She rearranged furniture while I was at work. The reading chair I'd positioned by the window for morning coffee relocated to a dark corner. My grandmother's quilt folded away into a closet because it clashed with the aesthetic. "I hope you don't mind," she'd said, not looking up from her magazine when I came home to find my carefully arranged living room transformed. I just have an eye for these things. You understand. It looks so much better now, don't you think? I stood there, coat still on, staring at the room that no longer felt like mine. I liked it the way it was, I said quietly. She laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. Oh, honey.
Trust me on this.
I've been decorating homes since before you were born. Ethan had walked in then, grinning at the changes. Looks great, Mom. See, Clara? I told you Mom has great taste. I'd retreated to the bedroom and opened my laptop, pretending to work. Instead, I'd opened a fresh document and typed a single line. Margaret rearranged my furniture without asking. Ethan defended her. I didn't know then that this document would grow, that I'd add to it almost daily, that it would become a chronicle of small violences, tiny erasures, the slow disappearing act of a woman in her own home. The dinner party happened 2 weeks later. I'd spent all Saturday cooking. Margaret's request for just a small gathering had ballooned into 12 guests, most of them people from her church and country club. I'd made my signature coq au vin, spent hours on a chocolate torte, arranged flowers from the garden into centerpieces that actually did look elegant. You're so sweet to help, Margaret had said that morning, watching me chop vegetables. The word help stuck like a fishbone. The guests arrived at 7. By 7:30, I understood my role. Margaret, this chicken is absolutely divine. Mrs. Kemper from 2 streets over practically moaned over her plate. You must give me the recipe. Oh, it's a family secret, Margaret demurred, dabbing her lips with a napkin. But I'm so glad you're enjoying it. I do try to keep my culinary standards high. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. Across the table, Ethan was nodding along, smiling, not correcting, not saying a word. And these flowers. Another guest, whose name I'd already forgotten, gestured at my arrangements. Margaret, your eye for design is impeccable. Thank you, dear. I've always believed a beautiful home reflects a beautiful soul. I set down my fork carefully, afraid that if I moved too quickly, something inside me would shatter. Under the table, Ethan found my hand and squeezed, not in solidarity but in warning. His eyes said, "Let it go. Don't make a scene." I let it go. Later, while I washed dishes and Margaret held court in the living room, my friend Lena texted, "How's the dinner party?" I stared at the message, bubbles appearing and disappearing as I tried to formulate a response that wasn't completely unhinged. Finally, fine.
Exhausting.
Tell you later. Her response was immediate. Call me tomorrow.
I'm worried about you.
The next morning, over coffee at our favorite cafe, I told Lena everything. She listened with growing alarm, her cappuccino going cold. Clara, this is gaslighting. Classic manipulation. She's taking credit for your work, your money, your literal home, and Ethan is letting it happen. It's not that simple, I said, but the words felt hollow. She's his mother. This is hard for everyone. We're adjusting. You're adjusting. They're exploiting. Lena leaned forward, her voice urgent. How much have you paid in bills? I pulled up my banking app, fingers trembling slightly as I calculated. The number made me nauseous. In 4 months, I'd covered over $30,000 in expenses, mortgage, utilities, taxes, groceries, repairs to the fence, a new water heater, Margaret's emergency, dental work that apparently couldn't wait. Lena's face went white. Clara, that's not adjusting. That's financial abuse. Don't, I said sharply. Don't call it that. It's just complicated. Family is complicated. She reached across the table and gripped my hand. Promise me you're keeping track. Promise me you're watching what's happening here. I promised. That night, I went through the filing cabinet in what was nominally our bedroom. I found the refinancing papers, the ones I'd signed in a hurry. I read them carefully this time, with clear eyes and a sinking stomach. The house was in my name. Solely, completely, legally mine. The mortgage I was paying, the property taxes, the homeowner's insurance, all mine. Margaret's name appeared nowhere. Ethan's name appeared nowhere. I owned the house that everyone treated as Margaret's. I sat on the bedroom floor, papers spread around me like evidence at a crime scene, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not anger yet. Not quite. Something colder and more sustainable. Something like clarity. I took photos of every document, uploaded them to a cloud drive with a password only I knew. Then I returned everything to its place, neat and innocent, and went downstairs for dinner. "There's my working girl." Margaret sang out from the kitchen. "I saved you a plate." Well, I would have, but Ethan was so hungry after his workout. He ate the leftovers. "You don't mind, do you? You can always grab something." I looked at Ethan, sprawled on the couch, remote in hand, eyes on the television. "No," I said evenly. "I don't mind." I ordered delivery and ate it in the bedroom, adding another line to my growing document. Margaret didn't save dinner. Ethan ate my portion. Neither apologized. The days began to blur together, each one adding new weight to the strange reality I was living. I'd come home to find my desk moved, my bathroom products rearranged, my carefully organized closet tidied, in ways that made nothing findable. "I was just helping," Margaret would say, all innocence. "You work so hard. I wanted to lighten your load." But it felt like the opposite. It felt like drowning while someone held my head just above water and asked why I wasn't grateful for the air. The locked-out incident happened on a Thursday. I'd stayed late at work, finalizing a campaign that had been my baby for 3 months. I was buzzing with success, texting Ethan about the win as I drove home. The client loved it. This could mean another promotion. His response, "That's great, babe. Mom made pot pie for dinner." I pulled into the driveway at 9:30, tired but happy. My key slid into the lock.
Turned.
Nothing. I tried again. The deadbolt was engaged from inside. I rang the doorbell.
Knocked.
Rang again. Through the frosted glass, I could see lights on, hear the murmur of the television. I called Ethan's phone. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I stood on the porch, my porch, the one I was paying for, and felt rain beginning to fall. I called again, and again. Finally, 40 minutes later, the door opened. Margaret stood there in her bathrobe, eyes wide with manufactured surprise. "Oh, Clara, I didn't realize you weren't in. I always lock up at 9 for safety. You know how it is, a woman alone." "You're not alone," I said slowly, rain dripping from my hair. "Ethan's here." "Well, yes, but... Oh dear, you're soaked."
Come in.
"Why didn't you call?" "I did call. Multiple times. My phone must have been charging."
I'm so sorry, sweetie.
"Just a silly mistake." Ethan appeared behind her, yawning. "What's all the commotion?" I looked at him, really looked at him. At the man I'd married 2 years ago, who'd promised partnership and respect and love, who was now standing behind his mother, asking what the commotion was about his wife being locked out of her own house. "Nothing," I said. "Just a mistake." I walked past them both, water pooling on the hardwood floor I'd had refinished last month, and went straight to the bedroom. I peeled off wet clothes, stood under a hot shower until my skin turned red, and then sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a towel, shaking. Not from cold. From something else. Something that felt like the last thread of patience finally fraying through. I opened my journal document and wrote. Margaret locked me out. Ethan defended her.
Called it a mistake.
This is not a mistake. This is a pattern. Underneath, I added. I need to be smarter. I need to be strategic. I need to stop explaining and start preparing. But I wasn't there yet. Not quite. That would come later. For now, I dried my hair, put on pajamas, and got into bed beside my husband, who was already asleep, one arm flung over his eyes, breathing deeply, dreaming whatever dreams men have when they don't realize they're slowly losing their wives. The morning after the lockout, I woke to an empty bed and the smell of coffee. For a moment, in that soft space between sleep and waking, I thought maybe Ethan had made breakfast. Maybe he'd realized what had happened last night and wanted to apologize. I should have known better. In the kitchen, Margaret stood at the stove, plating scrambled eggs and bacon onto 2 dishes. She hummed softly, some hymn from church. Ethan sat at the table, already eating, scrolling through his phone.
Good morning, I said.
Margaret glanced over her shoulder.
Oh.
Good morning, Clara. Coffee's fresh if you want some. I waited. She turned back to the stove, arranging fruit on Ethan's plate with careful precision. A full breakfast, lovingly prepared. She set it in front of him, squeezed his shoulder, and returned to the sink. Where's mine? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Margaret blinked, all concern. Oh, honey, I thought you'd eat at work. You always say you're too busy for breakfast. I didn't want to waste food. Ethan didn't look up from his phone. I poured coffee into a travel mug, my hands steady despite the tremor I felt inside.
Right.
My mistake. There's bread if you want toast, Margaret offered, already wiping down counters.
Ai fine.
I took my coffee and left, skipping breakfast entirely. In my car, I sat in the driveway for 5 full minutes, sipping bitter coffee, watching the house that was legally mine and feeling like an intruder in my own life. At work, I was sharp, focused, brilliant. I presented campaign ideas with confidence, handled client calls with ease, mentored junior staff with patience. This was where I made sense, where my contributions were acknowledged, my work valued, my name actually attached to my accomplishments. Clara, that presentation was killer, my boss Marcus said, catching me by the coffee machine. The client's already asking for you specifically on their next project. I smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with professional success and everything to do with simple recognition. Thanks, Marcus. I'm happy to take it on. You've really stepped up since the promotion. Keep this up, and we'll be talking about senior director by year's end. I went back to my desk glowing. Texted Ethan. Boss says I'm on track for senior director. His response came an hour later. Cool. Mom needs me to help her with something. Might be home late.
No congratulations. No excitement.
Just a dismissal wrapped in his mother's needs. That afternoon, I had coffee with Lena during her lunch break. She took one look at my face and said, "It's gotten worse, hasn't it?" I told her about breakfast, about being locked out, about the way my accomplishments evaporated the moment I walked through that front door. Lena listened with a darkness growing in her eyes. "Do you know what Margaret's been telling people?" she asked. My stomach dropped. What people? Neighbors.
Church ladies.
Anyone who'll listen. Lena pulled out her phone, showing me a screenshot of a neighborhood Facebook group. She's saying you're just staying there temporarily, until Ethan can afford better. Like you're some kind of charity case. I read the post, my vision blurring at the edges. There was Margaret, commenting on someone's question about the new couple at her house. Oh, they're not really new, just helping Clara get back on her feet. You know how hard it is for young people these days. We're just lending a hand until Ethan's ready to support his own household. I support the household, I whispered. I pay for everything. I know, Lena said gently. But she's rewriting the narrative, making herself the hero and you the dependent. Classic narcissist move. I couldn't eat after that. Couldn't focus. I went back to work and powered through, channeling fury into productivity, but underneath, something was calcifying. Hardening. That evening, Ethan came home excited, talking rapidly about a business opportunity. His friend Derek had this amazing idea for a startup, and they just needed some capital to get going. How much? I asked, though I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. Just $20,000 to start. Derek says.
No.
Ethan stopped mid-sentence, looking at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. What?
No.
We don't have $20,000 for a startup. We have savings. You just got promoted. You said yourself the money's good. My savings, I corrected quietly.
From my job.
And that money is for our future home. Remember? The reason we moved in here temporarily? Margaret's voice floated from the living room. Ethan, sweetheart, don't let her bully you about money. It's so unbecoming. Something in me snapped. We need to talk, I said to Ethan, ignoring Margaret. Privately.
Now.
We went to the bedroom. I closed the door and turned to face him, arms crossed. We need to discuss finances. Seriously. I've been tracking everything, and I'm paying for almost all household expenses. The mortgage, utilities, groceries, your mother's bills. My mother's bills? His face darkened. What are you implying? I'm not implying.
I'm stating. Look.
I pulled up my banking app, showed him the transactions. This charge for house maintenance. That's Margaret's credit card payment. This one labeled utilities. Her country club dues. Ethan, I've been covering her personal expenses for months. He barely glanced at the screen. You're being paranoid. Mom would never. Your mother has been taking advantage of us.
Of me.
And you've been letting it happen. His jaw tightened. That's my mother you're talking about. She raised me in this house, sacrificed everything after Dad died. If she needs help, we help her. That's what family does.
We?
When have you helped? I'm the only one contributing. Because you make more. What do you want me to do? Feel bad about my income? You always do this, make everything about money. It's exhausting, Clara. I stared at him, this man I'd married, this man who was supposed to be my partner. I make it about money because money is the only thing keeping a roof over our heads. And it's not even our roof, it's mine. The house is in my name.
Did you know that?
Uncertainty flickered across his face. It's still Mom's house. She lived here first. Then why am I paying the mortgage? He had no answer for that. Instead, he changed tactics. You've changed since we moved here. You used to be easygoing, fun. Now you're always stressed, always picking fights. I'm not picking fights. I'm setting boundaries. By accusing my mother of stealing? By asking for transparency. Our voices had risen. Through the door, I heard Margaret moving around, probably listening, probably savoring this. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his face flushed. I can't do this right now. Mom needs me to drive her to a doctor's appointment tomorrow, so I'll have to take the day off work. Which means less income. Which I'm sure you'll have something to say about. When's the appointment?
Morning.
10 o'clock. Then why do you need the whole day? Because, he exploded. Because she needs support. Because not everything is about maximizing efficiency and tracking dollars. God, Clara, when did you become so cold? I felt the words land like a slap. Cold. Unfeeling. The crimes of a woman who dared to notice. She was being used. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of this room. Go to your mother. Clearly, that's where you'd rather be. He stared at me for a long moment, something like hurt crossing his features. Then he left, closing the door a little too hard behind him. I sat on the bed, hands shaking, and opened my journal document. Added, Ethan called me cold for wanting financial transparency. Defended Margaret's expenses. Chose her side. Again. The next morning, true to his word, Ethan took the day off. I went to work, taught a workshop on digital strategy, led a team meeting, approved campaign materials. Normal. Professional. Valued. I came home to find them gone, and a note on the kitchen counter. Took Mom to lunch after the appointment. Don't wait up for dinner. I looked in the refrigerator. Empty except for condiments and Margaret's sparkling water, the expensive kind, $8 a bottle. I'd bought groceries 3 days ago. A week's worth of food gone. I stood there, refrigerator door open, cold air washing over me, and laughed. Not because anything was funny, because the alternative was screaming. Instead of screaming, I got strategic. I called my bank and asked about separating accounts. I called the mortgage company and confirmed, yes, the property was solely in my name, and yes, I could restrict access if needed. I called the utility companies and verified I was the only account holder. I took screenshots of every bill, every payment, every transaction. Then I called Lena. I need you to be honest with me, I said when she answered. Am I crazy? Am I overreacting to normal family dynamics? Clara, normal families don't lock you out of your own house. Normal families don't take credit for your work and your money while calling you cold for noticing. Normal families don't gaslight you into thinking you're the problem. So what do I do? A pause. Then, carefully, what do you want to do? I looked around the kitchen, The kitchen I'd painted last month, with the new fixtures I'd paid for, in the house that was legally mine but spiritually theirs. And I felt something click into place, solid and unshakable. I want my house back, I said. I want my life back. And I want them to understand what they did. Then we make a plan, Lena said. A careful, legal, documented plan. You start by protecting yourself financially, legally, emotionally. And you stop explaining yourself to people who aren't listening. When do I start? You already have, honey. You've been documenting everything. That's step 1. Now we move to step 2. We talked for an hour, mapping out strategy. How to separate finances without tipping them off. How to gather evidence. How to protect my assets. How to prepare for the confrontation that would inevitably come. When Ethan and Margaret came home that night, laughing about something from their day, I was calm. Pleasant. I asked about the appointment. Turned out it was just a routine checkup, nothing urgent, and nodded along to Margaret's story about the new restaurant they'd tried. Sounds lovely, I said, and meant it, because I was done fighting for scraps of consideration. Done explaining myself. Done being the bad guy in their narrative. If they wanted to treat this as Margaret's house, fine. But they'd learn soon enough whose name was on the deed. The birthday that wasn't mine happened 2 weeks later. Margaret had been planning something, I knew. Hushed phone calls, secret deliveries. I assumed naively, stupidly, that it was for me. My birthday was coming up, after all. Maybe this was an olive branch. Maybe she'd noticed the tension and wanted to make amends. I should have known better. On the evening of my 33rd birthday, I came home to find the house decorated. Balloons, a banner across the living room, the good china set out. My heart lifted despite everything. Then I saw the banner. Congratulations, Ethan. Margaret emerged from the kitchen, all smiles. Oh, good, you're home. We're just about to celebrate Ethan's promotion. Isn't it wonderful? The room tilted. Ethan's promotion?
Yes.
He finally made assistant manager at the gym. We're so proud. I made his favorite, beef Wellington. You don't mind, do you? I know it's your birthday, but this felt more important to celebrate as a family. Ethan had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mom wanted to make a big deal. I told her we could do something for you another day. Another day, I repeated flatly. Don't be difficult, Clara, Margaret said, her voice taking on that edge of steel wrapped in sugar. This is a family celebration. You're part of the family, aren't you? I looked around at the decorations, the cake with Ethan's name, the carefully wrapped presents on the side table. My birthday was today.
Right now.
This moment. And it had been erased as if it never existed. Of course, I heard myself say, Congratulations, Ethan. I ate dinner, sang happy birthday to my husband on my birthday, smiled when Margaret cut the cake, clapped when Ethan opened his gifts, played the role of the supportive wife, because that's what was expected. When everyone finally went to bed, I sat alone in the dark kitchen and added to my document. They celebrated Ethan's minor promotion on my birthday. Margaret planned it. Ethan let it happen. I was not mentioned once. Underneath, I wrote, I'm done being erased. The next morning, I started changing passwords. Bank accounts first, then email, then cloud storage. I moved copies of every important document to a secure folder only I could access. I updated my emergency contacts, removing Ethan, adding Lena. Small actions. Quiet preparation. Building a foundation they couldn't see. At work, I threw myself into projects with renewed intensity. If I couldn't control my home life, I'd dominate my professional one. I stayed late, came in early, volunteered for every challenging assignment. Marcus noticed. You're on fire lately, he said, pulling me aside after a particularly successful client presentation. Everything okay? You seem different. Just focused, I said. Motivated. He studied me for a moment and I wondered what he saw. The woman I was becoming? Or the woman I'd been all along? Finally given permission to exist? Well, keep it up. You're making me look good to the executives. That night, I came home to find Margaret in my closet. What are you doing? I asked, voice deadly calm. She didn't even look guilty. Just organizing, dear. You're so busy with work, I thought I'd help. Look, I donated some of your older clothes. They were really quite dated. You'll thank me when you need space for new things. You went through my personal belongings. Without asking. I was helping, she said, as if that explained everything. As if my privacy meant nothing. As if I meant nothing. Get out of my room. Margaret's eyebrows rose. Excuse me? Get out.
Now.
And don't ever touch my things again. This is my house, Clara. I'll go where I please. And there it was. Finally. The truth spoken aloud. No, I said softly. It's not. What did you say? This house is in my name. The mortgage is in my name. Every bill is in my name. Legally, Margaret, this is my house. And I'm asking you to leave my bedroom. Her face went white, then red. Ethan. He came running, alarmed by her tone. What's wrong? Your wife is having some kind of breakdown. She's claiming this house is hers, ordering me around. It is mine, I said, looking at Ethan. Check the deed.
Check the mortgage papers.
I'm the only name on them. I've been paying for everything while you both treated me like a guest who should be grateful for the privilege. Ethan's face cycled through confusion, denial, anger. That can't be right. Mom, this is your house. Then why doesn't her name appear on a single legal document? I pulled out my phone, showed him photos of the mortgage papers.
Look.
My name. My credit. My responsibility. Your mother has been living in my house, spending my money, and treating me like an intruder. And you've been letting her. You're twisting things, Margaret hissed. I raised my son here. I buried my husband from this house. It's mine in every way that matters. Except legally. Except financially. Except in reality. Ethan, are you going to let her talk to me this way? In my own house. And that's when he said it. The words that would become the title of my story. The moment everything crystallized into absolute clarity. Don't argue with my mother in her house. His voice shook the room. His face was red, his fists clenched. He looked at me like I was the villain, the interloper, the problem that needed solving. I felt something inside me go very, very cold. Not hot anger. Not passionate rage. Something glacial and permanent. The kind of cold that preserves things, that keeps them exactly as they are so they can be examined later, evidence of what once existed. Her house, I repeated.
Yes.
Show some respect. I looked at Margaret, who wore an expression of smug triumph. Then at Ethan, who truly believed what he'd just said. Who'd forgotten, or never cared, that I was the only thing keeping this house standing. Okay, I said simply. The agreement confused them. They'd expected a fight, more arguments, tears maybe. Instead, I just nodded, turned, and walked out of the room. Behind me, I heard Margaret whisper. She's finally learning her place. What she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that my place wasn't in that house anymore. Not as their grateful dependent, their convenient bank account, their invisible support system. My place was wherever I decided it would be. And I just decided it was time to make them understand exactly what they'd lost. I sat in my car in the driveway, engine off, hand steady on the wheel. Inside the house I'd bought, they were probably celebrating. Probably relieved that I'd backed down, that the difficult woman had finally been put in her place. Let them celebrate. Let them think they'd won. I opened my phone and texted Lena, "It's time. I need a lawyer. A good one." Her response came immediately. "I know, just the person. When do you want to meet?" "Tomorrow," I typed. "First thing tomorrow." I looked up at the house, at the warm lights in the windows, at the life I'd built and they'd stolen. My eyes weren't wet. My hands weren't shaking. I felt nothing but absolute, crystalline clarity. They'd called it her house.
Fine.
Let them live in her house, without my money, without my name, without my grace holding the whole thing together. Time to see how long it stands on its own. I started the car and drove to Lena's apartment, where I'd spend the night on her couch, planning the future I should have claimed months ago. As I drove away, I didn't look back. There was nothing behind me I needed to see. Only forward now. Only truth. Only justice. Let them keep the house, I thought. I'm taking back my life. I spent that first night at Lena's drafting a plan on her kitchen table while she made endless cups of tea. By dawn, I had a clear strategy written in neat bullet points, each one a step toward reclaiming what was mine. When I returned to the house the next evening after work, I was transformed. Not visibly, same clothes, same car, same keys in my hand. But internally, I'd shed something heavy. The need to be understood. The hope that they'd change. The belief that explanation would lead to acknowledgement. I was done explaining. "Clara." Margaret called from the living room when I walked in. "There you are. We were worried when you didn't come home last night." "I stayed at a friend's," I said evenly, setting down my bag. "Without telling us? That's rather inconsiderate. We didn't know where you were." I looked at her, really looked at her, and smiled. A small, pleasant smile that gave nothing away. "I'm 33 years old, Margaret. I don't need permission to spend the night elsewhere." Something flickered across her face. Uncertainty, maybe. She wasn't used to this version of me. Calm, detached, unruffled by her manufactured concern. Ethan appeared from the kitchen. "You could have at least texted. I called you 5 times. My phone died." I lied smoothly. "Sorry for the worry." I walked past them both up to the bedroom and closed the door. Not slammed. That would have shown emotion. Just closed, firm and final. Inside, I began the quiet work of separation. First, the Wi-Fi password. I'd been paying for the internet service since we moved in. I logged into the router settings and changed the password to something only I would know. Then I changed it on every device I owned, ensuring I'd remain connected while they wouldn't. Next, I went through every file on my laptop, every document in the desk drawers. Anything personal, anything important, anything that mattered, I secured it. Changed passwords on every online account. Updated security questions. Added 2-factor authentication. By the time I went downstairs for dinner, I was a fortress. Margaret had made pasta. She served Ethan first, then herself, then looked at me, as if suddenly remembering I existed. "There's more in the pot if you want some." "Thank you," I said pleasantly, and served myself. We ate in silence punctuated by Margaret's occasional commentary about her day. I listened, nodded at appropriate moments, and said very little. My restraint seemed to unnerve them more than anger would have. After dinner, Ethan tried to connect his laptop to the Wi-Fi. Frowned at the screen. Tried again. "Clara, what's the Wi-Fi password?" "It's not working." "I changed it," I said, loading the dishwasher with careful precision. "Why?" "Security. We should change it regularly anyway. I'll text it to you." I didn't text it to him. Not that night. Not the next day. Not until he asked 3 more times, each request more irritated than the last. When I finally sent it, Margaret was sitting right next to him. She watched him type it in, tried to memorize it. I saw her lips moving, repeating it silently. The next day, I changed it again. "Clara, the Wi-Fi's not working again," Ethan said that evening, exasperated. "Oh, it's working fine for me. Maybe reset your device." The password changed. Again. Did it? That's strange. Security software must have updated it automatically. "Here." I typed it into his phone myself, making sure the screen faced away from Margaret. Her frustration was palpable. "This is ridiculous. Why can't we just keep one password? Cybersecurity is important, Margaret. You never know who might try to access your network." The irony wasn't lost on me. I was protecting my network from the people living in my house. Over the next week, I implemented other small changes. I stopped buying groceries for the household, only for myself, which I kept in a mini fridge I installed in my bedroom. I stopped doing Margaret's laundry, stopped cleaning common areas beyond basic tidiness, stopped being the invisible infrastructure that held everything together. And I started preparing documents. Every evening after work, I'd spend an hour at the library, printing and organizing. Bank statements showing every payment I'd made. The mortgage documents with my name. Utility bills, property tax receipts, insurance policies. 3 years of evidence, neatly compiled into color-coded folders. I met with a lawyer Lena recommended, a sharp woman named Reina Patel who took one look at my documentation and said, "You've built an airtight case. This is impressive." "I'm good at my job," I said. "Organization and evidence are kind of my thing." "What outcome do you want?" "I want them out of my house. I want reimbursement for what they've taken. And I want it done legally, cleanly, so they can never claim I acted out of spite." Reina nodded slowly. "We can do that. But it's going to get ugly. They'll fight. They'll make you the villain." "They already have," I said. "I'm just correcting the record." Back at the house, tensions mounted. Margaret sensed something shifting, even if she couldn't identify what. She started making pointed comments at dinner, testing boundaries. "You know, Clara, you've seemed very distant lately. Very cold. Ethan's noticed too, haven't you, sweetheart?" Ethan nodded, grateful for her opening. "Yeah, it's like you're not even here half the time. We're supposed to be a family." I said, cutting my chicken. "Family. What does that mean to you exactly?" "What kind of question is that?" "A genuine one. I'm curious about your definition." Margaret jumped in, voice dripping with false warmth. "Family means supporting each other, being there for one another, putting the needs of the group above individual selfishness." "Interesting," I said. "And does family mean transparency, honesty, mutual respect?" "Of course," Margaret said. "Then why am I the only one paying bills? Why do you take credit for my work? Why does my husband defend you locking me out of my own house?" The air went electric. Ethan's fork clattered against his plate. "Not this again," he groaned. "Can we have one meal without you bringing up money?" "Answer the question." "What question? Why do you call this your mother's house when I'm the only one paying for it?" Margaret stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I won't sit here and be interrogated like a criminal in my own home." I stayed seated, calm. "Your home?"
Right.
"The one with my name on the deed. The one I've paid $60,000 into over 3 years while you've paid 0. That home." Her face went white. "How dare you?" "How dare I what? Tell the truth? Keep records? Expect accountability." "Ethan, are you hearing this? Your wife is trying to claim my house." I stood then, slowly, deliberately. "It's not a claim, Margaret. It's a fact. And you know what the worst part is? I would have shared it freely. I would have welcomed you. But you couldn't just accept generosity. You had to take control. You had to erase me while standing on my foundation." "You're delusional," she spat. "I have documentation that says otherwise." I picked up my plate, rinsed it, and placed it in the dishwasher. "Enjoy your evening." I went upstairs, closed the door, and added another entry to my journal. First direct confrontation. Margaret denied everything. Ethan said nothing in my defense. "They still don't believe I'll act. But I would."
Soon.
The breakthrough moment came 2 days later, when Margaret made her biggest mistake yet. I came home from work to find my office completely rearranged. My desk, the expensive ergonomic one I'd bought specifically for my remote workdays, had been moved to the garage. In its place was Margaret's sewing table, fabric and patterns spread across the surface. "What happened to my office?" I asked, standing in the doorway. Margaret looked up, all innocence. "Oh, I needed more space for my quilting projects. You barely use this room anyway, always at work. I figured you wouldn't mind. Your desk is safe in the garage." "You moved my work setup to the garage without asking." "Well, I couldn't very well ask. You're never here. And really, Clara, I need this space more than you do. You can work at the kitchen table." Something inside me, the last thread of tolerance, snapped. "Move it back," I said quietly. "Excuse me? Move your sewing table out of my office and put my desk back. Today." "I will not. This is my house, and I'll arrange it however I see fit." I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and started making calls. Right there, in front of her. "Yes, I need to schedule a service interruption for account number." I rattled off the electricity account number. "Tomorrow morning, please. Account holder change." Margaret's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" I made another call. "Water services? Same request, please." Service interruption tomorrow, pending account verification. Clara, stop this. Another call. Gas company? Yes. I need to suspend service effective tomorrow morning. Ethan, Margaret screamed. Ethan, get in here. He came running from the basement. What's wrong? Your wife has lost her mind. She's canceling the utilities. Ethan looked at me, confused. Clara, what are you doing? I'm paying respect to the real homeowner, I said calmly, finishing my last call. Margaret says this is her house. She says she decides how rooms are used. So I'm letting her handle the responsibilities that come with ownership, like paying the bills. The color drained from Ethan's face. You can't just cut off utilities. That's insane. I'm not cutting them off. I'm transferring responsibility to your mother, since it's her house. But she can't. The accounts are in your name. Exactly, I said softly. Every single one. Mortgage, electric, water, gas, internet, insurance. All mine. Because this is my house, Ethan. Not hers.
Meaning?
Margaret sank into a chair, the reality finally hitting her. You can't do this. I can. And I am. You wanted to run this house? Run it. Pay for it. Put your name on the accounts. Oh wait, you can't. Because legally, you have no claim here at all. This is my son's home. Your son's name isn't on anything either. I looked at Ethan, saw the dawning horror in his eyes as he understood what was happening. You both forgot that I'm not a guest here. I'm not a visitor. I'm the owner. And I'm done being treated like anything less. I walked past them both, went upstairs, and started packing a bag. I heard urgent whispered arguments below, footsteps pacing, Margaret's voice rising in panic. Let them panic. Let them scramble. Let them finally understand what it felt like to have the ground shift beneath you. That night, I stayed at Lena's again. In the morning, exactly as scheduled, the power went out at the house. Ethan called me 17 times before I finally answered at noon. Clara, the power's out. The water's off. What the hell did you do? I told you. I suspended services on my accounts. You can't just leave us without power. You're not without power. You're just without my power. Margaret's welcome to set up service in her name. It is her house after all. You know damn well she can't do that. Her credit is. He stopped abruptly. Her credit is what, Ethan? Bad? Non-existent? Funny how that works, isn't it? She can't qualify for utilities in the house she claims to own. This is cruel, Clara. This isn't like you. You're right, I said, and something in my voice must have warned him. The old me would have kept paying, kept suffering, kept hoping you'd notice. But that version of me died the night you told me not to argue with your mother in her house. The house I paid for. The house I own. So no, this isn't like me. This is the new me. The one who demands accountability. So, what do we do? Just sit here in the dark? You have options. Margaret can go stay with her sister. You can get a hotel room. Or you can acknowledge reality. That this is my house, and you've been living here on my generosity, which you repaid with erasure and contempt. I never meant, but you did. Intent doesn't matter when the impact is the same. You let your mother lock me out. You celebrated your promotion on my birthday. You called me cold for wanting financial transparency. You chose her over me every single time, and now you're shocked that I'm choosing myself. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, can we talk? In person? Not yet. When you're ready to have a real conversation, one where you're honest about what's happened and what needs to change, call Reina Patel. She's my attorney. She'll coordinate. Attorney? Clara, come on. I hung up. The next call came from Margaret's number. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice saccharine and false. Clara, darling, I think we've all been under a lot of stress. Why don't you come home, and we can sort this out like family? I'm sure we can find a compromise. I deleted it without finishing. Lena came home from work to find me on her couch, surrounded by legal documents, color-coding sections with highlighters. How are you feeling? She asked gently. Powerful, I said, and realized it was true. For the first time in 3 years, I feel like I have control over my own life. They're going to fight dirty. You know that, right? Let them. I have documentation, legal ownership, and 3 years of evidence. They have entitlement and denial. I know which case is stronger. That evening, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it to find a long message from Margaret's sister, Aunt Ruth, whom I'd met exactly twice. Clara, Margaret called me very upset. I don't know what's going on between you all, but cutting off utilities seems extreme. Whatever Ethan did, Margaret doesn't deserve to suffer. She's a widow who just wants to be close to her son. Please reconsider. I stared at the message, marveling at how quickly the narrative had been rewritten. In their version, I was the aggressor, the cruel daughter-in-law punishing a poor widow for wanting family closeness. I typed back, Aunt Ruth, I appreciate your concern. For clarity, I own the house legally and financially. I've paid every bill for 3 years while being treated as a guest. Margaret moved my work equipment to the garage without permission and claims she runs the house. I'm simply allowing her to take responsibility for what she claims is hers. The full context matters. I added. Also, Margaret is welcome to stay with you if she needs accommodation. I'm not making anyone homeless. I'm establishing boundaries. I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I forwarded the text to Raina with a note. The family campaign has begun. They're painting me as the villain. Her response. Expected. Don't engage directly. Document everything. Let them expose their tactics. Smart. I deleted my unsent response to Aunt Ruth and simply didn't reply at all. The next day, I returned to the house for the first time since cutting the power. I'd called ahead to let them know, through Raina, that I'd be coming to collect some personal items. I brought Lena's brother Marcus, a certified property manager, as a neutral witness. Ethan and Margaret were sitting in the darkened living room when I arrived. The curtains were open for light, and they looked haggard, Margaret's hair not perfectly styled, Ethan unshaven. Clara, Ethan stood, attempting a smile. Thank God you're here. We need to fix this. I'm here to collect my belongings, I said evenly. Marcus is here to witness and ensure everything remains civil. Marcus nodded professionally. I'm just here to observe and document, folks. Let's keep this smooth. I walked past them to my office. Margaret's sewing table was still there, but my desk had been moved back from the garage, hastily, based on the scratches on the floor. Too little, too late. I packed my work equipment carefully. Laptop, monitors, desk accessories. My files had already been secured digitally, but I took the physical copies too. Margaret watched from the doorway, arms crossed. You're really doing this, she said. Not a question. I am. You're throwing away your marriage over pride. I stopped packing and turned to face her.
No, Margaret.
You threw away my marriage by demanding your son choose between his wife and his mother and celebrating when he chose you. I'm just acknowledging the choice he made. He loves you. He loves a version of me that doesn't ask questions or demand respect. The version that pays for everything while you both pretend it's your house. That version is gone. You've become bitter. I've become clear. I zipped my laptop bag and moved to the bedroom. There's a difference. In our bedroom, my bedroom, I packed clothes, toiletries, jewelry. The photos on the dresser gave me pause. Ethan and me on our wedding day, both of us glowing with hope and promise. That felt like someone else's life now. I left the photos where they were. Ethan appeared in the doorway. How long are you going to punish us? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting myself. By cutting off power? By forcing Mom out of her home. Her home? Ethan, tell me right now, whose name is on the mortgage?
He looked away.
Say it, I pressed. Out loud. Who legally owns this house? You, he muttered. And who has paid every bill for 3 years? Silence. Say it, Ethan. Who has financially supported this household while you and your mother acted like I was the one being given charity? You. Barely a whisper. So this is my home. That I paid for. That I maintained. That I made possible. And you both treated me like an intruder who should be grateful for the privilege of paying your way. I shouldered my bag. The punishment isn't what I'm doing now. The punishment was what you did to me for 3 years. I'm just ending it. I walked past him. Marcus followed, his tablet documenting everything. At the door, Margaret made one last attempt. Where are we supposed to go? Anywhere you can afford, I said. I'm sure you'll figure it out. You're both very resourceful when it comes to using other people's resources. I'll fight this, she said, her voice hardening. I'll get a lawyer. I'll take you to court. Please do. I smiled, and it was genuine. I have 3 years of documentation. Receipts for every payment. Proof of ownership. Evidence of your financial fraud. Yes, Margaret. Routing funds through household accounts for your personal expenses is fraud. Please get a lawyer. Let's bring all of this into the light. Her face paled. Ethan grabbed her arm. Mom, don't. She's bluffing, Margaret said, but her voice wavered. I'm not. I pulled a folder from my bag and set it on the entry table. This is a copy of my documentation. Your lawyer will need to see it. It includes the charges to your credit card that were labeled as household maintenance, your country club dues marked as utilities, your boutique purchases coded as groceries. All funded through accounts I controlled, all withdrawn without my explicit consent. That's called theft, Margaret. You're welcome to explain it to a judge. I walked out of the house, my house, and into the sunlight. Marcus followed, and we got into my car without looking back. That was intense, Marcus said quietly. That was necessary, I corrected. As we drove away, I saw them in the rearview mirror, standing on the porch, looking lost. Part of me, a very small part, felt something like pity, but mostly I felt free. That night, headlights swept across Lena's apartment windows. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. We need to talk. I'm outside. I looked at Lena. She shook her head. You don't have to. I know. But I went anyway. Ethan was leaning against his car, looking exhausted. When he saw me, he straightened. Clara, please. Just hear me out. You have 5 minutes.
I'm sorry.
God, I'm so sorry. I didn't see what was happening. I didn't realize how much how much you were carrying. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Can we fix this? Can we try? I studied him in the streetlight. This man I'd built a life with, who'd let it crumble through negligence and denial. Do you understand what you're apologizing for? For not supporting you. For letting Mom manipulate things. For not seeing. For choosing her. I interrupted. Every single time. That's what you're apologizing for. Years of choosing her comfort over my dignity. Years of treating my contributions as invisible while her demands were sacred. That's what broke us, Ethan. Not money. Not the house. The fact that when it came down to it, I was never your priority. You are now, he said desperately. I see it now. I'll do better. Now that I've turned off the power? Now that I've proven I'm not bluffing? That's not growth, Ethan. That's survival instinct. So what do I do? How do I fix this? I looked at him for a long moment, this man who'd been my partner and was now a stranger. You start by being honest. With yourself, with me, with your mother. You acknowledge what happened without minimizing it. You separate your finances from hers. You go to therapy. You become someone who can see manipulation happening and stops it instead of enabling it. And then maybe we can talk about what's salvageable. But Ethan, I'm not coming back to that house until you understand it's my house. Not yours. Not your mother's.
Mine.
And if you can't respect that, then we're done. He nodded slowly, tears on his face. Okay. I'll do whatever it takes. We'll see. I turned to go, then paused. And Ethan? Your mother is not welcome back. Ever. That's non-negotiable. If you can't accept that boundary, then don't bother with the rest. I walked back to Lena's apartment, closed the door, and finally, let myself feel the weight of everything that had happened. Lena wrapped me in a hug while I cried. Not for the marriage I'd lost, but for the time I'd wasted hoping people would change without consequences. You did the right thing, Lena whispered. I know, I said. It just hurts anyway. That's how you know it mattered. That night, I slept better than I had in months. In the morning, I called Raina. I'm ready for the next step, I said. Let's make this official. Exclusive occupancy order, and everything else you recommended. Financial audit, restraining order if they continue harassment, formal eviction proceedings if they don't leave voluntarily. I want this done right. Consider it started. I hung up and looked out Lena's window at the sunrise. Somewhere across town, Ethan and Margaret were sitting in darkness. Soon, they'd be sitting somewhere else entirely. And I'd be standing in my own home, in my own light, finally taking up the space I'd paid for all along. The locksmith's van pulled up to the curb at exactly 9 a.m. on Saturday. I'd chosen morning deliberately, weekend timing when neighbors would be home, when witnesses would see that everything I did was legal, methodical, professional. I stepped out of my car with a leather folder labeled Ownership and Access in gold lettering. The locksmith, a weathered man in his 50s named Joe, nodded at me respectfully. You're the homeowner? He asked, checking his tablet. I am. I handed him my driver's license and a copy of the deed. He scanned both, compared them, and nodded. Everything's in order, ma'am. Let's get those locks changed. Ethan appeared on the porch almost immediately, probably having watched from the window. Clara, what the hell is this? Security upgrade, I said calmly. Joe, you can start with the front door. You can't change the locks. I live here. I turned to face him fully, my expression neutral. You live here because I've allowed it. That's about to become formalized. Joe is legally changing the locks on my property, which is my right as the sole owner. Margaret pushed past Ethan, her face twisted with fury. This is illegal. You can't lock us out of our home. Joe glanced at me. I nodded, giving him permission to speak. Ma'am, he said to Margaret, I've verified ownership. This lady is the legal owner of record. She has every right to change her locks. But we live here. That's between you folks, Joe said diplomatically, pulling out his tools. I'm just here to do the job. As he worked on the deadbolt, I pulled out printed documents from my folder. Ethan, Margaret, these are your supervised access schedules. You have 48 hours of supervised access to collect your essential belongings. Access windows are listed here, 2 hours in the morning, 2 in the evening, with Lena's brother Marcus present as a neutral witness. Ethan snatched the paper from my hand, scanning it frantically. 2-hour windows? Clara, all our stuff is in there. Essential belongings, I corrected. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, personal items. You'll have adequate time. Marcus will be present to ensure nothing of mine is taken and that the process remains civil. You're treating us like criminals, Margaret hissed. I'm treating you like tenants who never paid rent, I replied evenly. Actually, I'm being more generous than that. A tenant without a lease would have no access at all after eviction. Mrs. Kemper from 2 doors down had wandered out to her mailbox, an obvious pretense to watch the drama unfold. I met her eyes and smiled politely. Let her watch. Let the whole neighborhood see me taking back what was mine. Joe finished the front door and moved to the back entrance. The sound of the drill was steady, purposeful, final. Each screw removed was a piece of the old life being dismantled. Each new lock installed was a boundary restored. Where are we supposed to go? Ethan asked, and for the first time, I heard something other than anger in his voice. Fear, maybe. The dawning realization that this was real. Margaret can stay with Aunt Ruth. You can get a hotel, stay with friends, figure out your next steps. Those are your problems to solve, Ethan. Not mine. I'm your husband. You're my husband who told me not to argue with your mother in her house. The house I paid for. So now you both get to understand what it feels like when the person holding everything together lets go. Margaret turned away, pulling out her phone. I heard her speaking urgently to someone, probably Aunt Ruth, voice pitched high with indignation. She's changing the locks. No, she won't listen? Yes, I told you she'd gone crazy. I let her talk. Let her spin whatever narrative she needed. The truth was documented, notarized, and legally bulletproof. Joe finished the back door and moved to the garage entrance. The front door now had a keypad lock, sleek and modern. He handed me a card with the master code. You can set up to 20 user codes, he explained. Each one can be activated or deactivated remotely through this app. He showed me the interface on his tablet. You'll have complete control over who has access and when.
Perfect, I said.
Thank you, Joe. As he worked on the final lock, I opened my banking app and completed something I'd been preparing for weeks. Every utility, every service, every account, I changed the passwords, updated the security questions, and added additional authentication requirements. The house's digital fortress matched its physical one now. When Joe finished, he walked me through the system one more time. You've got good security here now, ma'am. Nothing fancy, but solid. Anyone tries to force entry, the system logs it. I paid him, added a generous tip, and watched him drive away. Then I turned to Ethan and Margaret, who stood on the porch steps looking lost. Your first supervised access window is Monday at 9 a.m., I said. Marcus will meet you here. Come with bags or boxes for your belongings. The list of what you can take is in the packet I gave you. Anything not on that list stays. Clara, please. Ethan tried one more time. Can we just talk? Inside? Like adults. We can talk through our attorneys. Reina Patel is representing me. Have your lawyer contact her to discuss terms. Terms? Terms for what? For everything, Ethan. The divorce. The property settlement. Your repayment plan for 3 years of expenses you never contributed to. All of it. The word divorce hung in the air like smoke. Margaret gasped. Ethan's face crumbled. You're really doing this, he whispered. I already did it. The rest is just paperwork. I walked up the porch steps, forcing them to move aside.
At the door, I paused.
One more thing. Margaret, you're barred from this property effective immediately. If you attempt to enter during Ethan's access windows, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. That's not a threat. That's a legal boundary. You can't. I can. I am. This is my house, and you are not welcome in it. I punched in the new code, a string of numbers that meant something only to me, and heard the lock click open. I stepped inside, turned, and looked at them one last time. Goodbye, Margaret. Ethan, see you Monday at 9. I closed the door. The new lock engaged with a sound that felt like a gavel striking. Final, authoritative, absolute. Through the window, I watched them stand there for a long moment. Then Margaret's shoulders started shaking, tears or rage. I couldn't tell. Ethan put his arm around her and guided her toward his car. I watched them drive away, then turned to survey my house. My house. The words felt strange and new and right all at once. The silence was profound. For 3 years, this space had hummed with tension, with unspoken resentments, with the constant energy of walking on eggshells. Now it was just quiet, peaceful.
Mine.
I walked through each room, really seeing them for the first time. The living room where Margaret had rearranged my furniture. The kitchen where she'd forgotten my breakfast. The office where she'd moved my desk. The bedroom where Ethan had chosen her over me, again and again. These were no longer crime scenes. They were blank canvases. I pulled out my phone and called Lena. It's done. How are you feeling? I stood in the center of my living room, light streaming through windows I'd paid to replace, falling on floors I'd refinished, in a space I'd maintained while being told it wasn't mine. Free, I said. I feel absolutely free. Monday morning, I sat across from Reina in her office, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Between us lay 3 years of my life, reduced to color-coded binders and tab documents. You've documented like a CFO, Reina said, flipping through mortgage statements, utility bills, credit card receipts. Most people come to me with a shoebox of random papers. You've built a legal fortress. I'm good at organization, I said. Turns out that skill translates well to evidence collection. She smiled grimly. It does. Let me walk you through what we're filing today. She pulled out a legal pad. First, a motion for exclusive occupancy. That's essentially formalizing what you've already done. You're the owner. They're unauthorized occupants. Second, a financial restraint order preventing any further access to accounts with your name. Third, a harassment protection order given Margaret's pattern of manipulation and the campaign I suspect is coming. It's already started, I said, showing her the texts from Aunt Ruth, the voicemails from Margaret, the attempts to paint me as unstable and cruel. Perfect. This helps our case. We'll include this pattern of third-party harassment. She made notes. Now, the discovery requests. We're asking for full financial disclosure from both Ethan and Margaret. Bank statements, credit cards, cash withdrawals. Everything. You think we'll find something? I know we will. People who steal always leave trails. She looked up, her expression serious. How are you holding up? This is going to get uglier before it gets better. I'm ready, I said. And I was. The filings went through by Wednesday. By Friday, the discovery requests came back, and Raina called me with news. Clara, you need to come to my office. Now. I drove straight there, anxiety building. Raina met me at the door, her face troubled. What is it? I asked. She led me to her conference room, where documents were spread across the table. The bank statements revealed something I didn't expect. Look at this. She pointed to a series of transactions, monthly Zelle transfers from the joint account Ethan and I shared. Amounts ranging from $500 to $2,000, all sent to an account labeled MC. Margaret Chambers, I said flatly. Yes. But look at the memo lines. House maintenance. Roof repair. Emergency medical. And look at the dates. She traced her finger down the timeline. These overlap with periods when you've already paid those bills. The roof was repaired last June. You paid the contractor directly. Yet here's a $2,000 transfer to Margaret in July, marked roof repair. I felt sick. How much total? Raina pulled up a spreadsheet. Over 3 years? $43,000. Transferred from your joint account to Margaret's personal account, all with deceptive memo lines. Ethan authorized these? His digital signature is on every transaction. He had to approve them from the account. I sat down heavily. $43,000. On top of the $60,000 I'd already calculated in direct bill payments. Over $100,000 of my money funneled to Margaret while I was told I was being obsessed with finances. There's more, Raina said quietly. She pulled out a pawn ticket. This turned up in Ethan's disclosed documents. He's legally required to disclose all assets and transactions. Look at the item. I read the description and felt my blood turn to ice. That's my grandmother's ring. The heirloom you told me about? My grandmother gave it to me before she died. It was the one thing. My voice caught. I kept it in my jewelry box. I noticed it was missing 2 months ago, but Ethan said I must have misplaced it, that maybe I'd put it somewhere safe and forgotten. He pawned it, Raina said, her voice hard. 2 months ago for $1,500. The memo on his bank statement says, medical emergency, mom's procedure. She didn't have a procedure. Her insurance covered everything. She told me herself it didn't cost her anything. So, he pawned your grandmother's ring for cash that went directly to his mother, under false pretenses. I stood up, walked to the window, tried to breathe through the rage and grief colliding in my chest. My grandmother's ring. The one she'd worn for 60 years of marriage. The one she'd pressed into my hand on her deathbed, saying, "This carried me through the hard times. Let it carry you too." And Ethan had sold it. Given it to a stranger for cash to hand to his mother. Can we get it back? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. We'll try. I'll contact the pawn shop immediately. Sometimes they're willing to work with us in situations like this. And Ethan? Margaret? What happens to them? Raina's smile was sharp. This changes everything. The transfers constitute financial fraud, using deceptive descriptions to misappropriate marital funds. The ring is theft. With this evidence, we're not just talking about divorce and eviction. We're talking about potential criminal charges if they don't cooperate fully. The court hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I dressed carefully that morning. Professional, composed, unshakable. Navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. I looked like what I was, a successful woman taking back what was stolen. Margaret arrived with a lawyer she'd somehow scraped together, a nervous-looking man who kept adjusting his tie. She wore her church best, probably hoping to look like a wronged mother. Ethan sat beside her, avoiding my eyes. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Moreno, reviewed the filings with increasing interest. When she got to the financial records, her eyebrows rose. "Counsel for the respondents," she said to Margaret's lawyer. "Have you reviewed the discovery documents?" "Yes, Your Honor, but we contend that the transfers were made with Ms. Chambers's implicit consent as part of normal household." Implicit consent. Judge Moreno's voice could have cut glass. For $43,000? Labeled as home repairs that were already paid for? That's not implicit consent, counsel. That's conversion of marital assets through fraudulent representation. Margaret's lawyer paled. Raina stood smoothly. "Your Honor, the petitioner has provided 3 years of documentation showing sole financial responsibility for the marital residence, including mortgage, utilities, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. During this period, the respondents not only failed to contribute, but actively misappropriated funds. The property is titled solely in Ms. Chambers, Clara Chambers' name. We're requesting immediate exclusive possession, a financial restraint order, and an order requiring respondents to vacate the premises within 30 days. Your Honor," Margaret's lawyer scrambled, "my client is a widow who has lived in that home for 30 years. Your client," Judge Moreno interrupted, "has lived in that home rent-free while the petitioner paid all expenses and was subjected to harassment and financial exploitation. The deed is clear. The financial records are clear. Unless you have evidence to the contrary." Silence. "I didn't think so." Judge Moreno signed several documents with swift, decisive strokes. "Exclusive possession is granted to Clara Chambers. The respondents are hereby ordered to complete removal of personal belongings within 30 days, supervised access only. Margaret Chambers is barred from the property except for a single supervised visit to collect personal items. Financial restraint order granted. No further access to any accounts bearing Ms. Clara Chambers' name." She looked up, her gaze landing on Ethan. "And Mr. Chambers? Regarding the spousal support calculation, given the evidence of your unauthorized withdrawals and fraudulent transfer of marital funds, I'm ordering temporary spousal support payable from you to your wife in the amount of $2,000 per month until final dissolution proceedings." Ethan's face went white. "Your Honor, I can't afford." "You could afford to send your mother $43,000 of your wife's money. You can afford court-ordered support. If you can't, I suggest you have a conversation with your mother about repayment." Judge Moreno's tone suggested she was done with the whole family. "Anything else, counsels?" "No, Your Honor," Raina said, satisfaction clear in her voice. "Then we're adjourned." The gavel came down, and it was over.
Just like that.
Months of suffering reduced to a legal order, a signature, a decision that I'd been right all along. Outside the courthouse, Ethan tried to approach me. Raina stepped between us. "All communication goes through counsel, Mr. Chambers. That includes right now." "Clara, please. Just let me explain." I met his eyes for the first time that day. "Explain what, Ethan?" "How you stole my grandmother's ring. How you funneled my money to your mother while calling me obsessed with finances. There's nothing you can say that changes what you did." "I'll make it right. I'll sign the repayment agreement. I'll separate from Mom's finances. Just tell me what you need." "I need you to become someone who sees manipulation and stops it instead of enabling it," I said quietly. "I need you to value honesty over comfort. I need you to be a partner instead of a child playing house with his mother's approval. Can you do that?" His silence was answer enough. "I didn't think so." I turned to Raina. "Let's go." As we walked to the parking garage, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Lena's friend Sarah. I work at Prestige Pawn on 5th Street. Lena told me about your ring. Come by tomorrow. I think we can work something out." I stopped walking, reading the message twice to make sure it was real. Raina, the pawn shop, They want to talk. Go tomorrow. I'll come with you. That night, I sat in my reclaimed living room, legal orders spread on the coffee table, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the naive hope that people would change, but the solid hope that comes from taking action. From fighting back. From winning. The house felt different in the days after the hearing. Each room I entered, I found myself stopping, really looking, seeing not what had been done to me there, but what I could create instead. I started with Margaret's floral drapes. Heavy, oppressive things that blocked more light than they let in. I pulled them down myself, standing on a stepladder, feeling a savage satisfaction as each panel fell. The windows underneath were beautiful, original craftsman glass that had been hidden for years. I left them bare for now, letting in floods of natural light that made the rooms feel twice as large. The walls came next. Margaret had favored dark, dated wallpaper, patterns that might have been elegant in 1985, but now just felt claustrophobic. I spent a weekend steaming it off, revealing the plaster underneath. Some parts needed patching, but I didn't mind. Each hole I filled felt symbolic, repairing damage that went deeper than walls. I painted everything a soft, warm off-white. Not stark, not cold, but clean. A blank canvas. As I rolled paint over the last of Margaret's aesthetic choices, I listened to podcasts about financial literacy, about setting boundaries, about building the life you want instead of accepting the life you're given. At work, my career was flourishing in ways I'd never imagined. The household systems app I'd been developing, inspired by my own nightmare of financial manipulation, had caught fire in our pilot program. Marcus called me into his office 3 weeks after the court hearing. Clara, sit down. I've got news. I sat, trying to read his expression. The beta test results for your budgeting app are through the roof. Users are calling it revolutionary. One woman wrote, "This app saved my marriage by showing my husband where our money actually goes." Another said, "I finally feel like I have financial autonomy in my relationship." Do you understand what you've created here? I thought about my own spreadsheets, my documentation, my desperate need to prove I wasn't crazy. I created transparency, I said. Consent. Shared access to information. Things that should be default in relationships but often aren't. Exactly. And the market is hungry for it. We want to fast-track this to full development, which means we need a product lead. He smiled. Congratulations, Clara. You're being promoted to senior director, effective immediately. 20% raise, full team under you, equity stake in the app's success. I sat there, stunned. Marcus, You deserve this. You've earned it. Take the win. I took the win. That evening, I came home to my quiet, light-filled house and called Lena. I got promoted. Senior director. She screamed so loudly I had to pull the phone from my ear. Clara, that's amazing. We're celebrating. Dinner tonight, my treat, somewhere expensive.
Deal.
Over sushi at the best restaurant in town, Lena raised her glass. To Clara, who paid for her house, kicked out the freeloaders, and turned her trauma into a successful app. You're basically a superhero. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. I'm just someone who got tired of being treated badly. That's literally what makes someone a hero. Recognizing they deserve better and fighting for it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it warily, expecting another message from Margaret's flying monkeys. Instead, Clara, this is Aunt Ruth. I've been talking to Margaret. She finally told me the truth about the money, about the house, about everything. I owe you an apology. What they did, was wrong. I'm sorry I didn't listen before. I showed it to Lena. She read it, eyebrows rising.
Wow.
Someone in that family has a conscience. I typed back. Thank you for reaching out. I appreciate you taking the time to understand the situation. Ruth's response came quickly. Margaret won't admit it, but she needed this boundary. She's been enabled her whole life. Maybe this will teach her something. I hope you find peace. Huh? I said, showing Lena the follow-up. Maybe there's one reasonable person in that family after all. Too little, too late, but I'll take it. The supervised moving sessions happened over the next 2 weeks. Marcus, professional and neutral, oversaw each one. Ethan came alone. Margaret had been barred from the property, a fact that clearly pained him every time he loaded another box into his car. On the third session, he tried again. Clara, I signed the repayment papers. All of them. The property waiver, the divorce terms, the non-interference order. I did what you asked. Good, I said, not looking up from my laptop. I was working at the kitchen table, making a point of living my life while he packed up his. Can we talk? Really talk. I saved my document and closed the laptop. You have something to say? He sat down across from me, looking hollow.
I'm sorry.
I know I've said it before, but I mean it. I've been in therapy.
Twice a week.
I'm starting to see things I couldn't see before. How enmeshed I was with Mom. How I put her needs above yours, above mine, above reality. That's good, Ethan. I'm glad you're getting help. Is there any chance, his voice cracked, is there any chance we could try again? Later, when I'd done more work on myself. I looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the man I'd married, buried somewhere under the years of poor choices and enabled behavior. Maybe in time, he could become someone whole, someone healthy, someone capable of partnership. But he wouldn't become that person with me. I don't think so, I said gently. What we had is too broken. Too much damage. You need to heal for yourself, not to win me back. And I need to move forward without looking over my shoulder, wondering if you'll choose her again. She's out of my life, he said quickly. I told her I can't have a relationship with her until she takes responsibility for what she did. Until she pays you back. How'd she take that? She said I was choosing you over my own mother. That I'd regret it. He laughed bitterly. She still doesn't get it. Still thinks she's the victim. Some people never do. I stood, signaling the conversation was over. I hope you find what you need, Ethan. I really do. But it won't be with me. He nodded, accepting it finally. Truly. I left something for you. In the bedroom. I think you should have it. After he left, I went upstairs. On the dresser sat a small velvet box. I opened it with trembling hands. My grandmother's ring. A note was tucked beside it. Sarah at the pawn shop sold it back to me at cost. I know it doesn't fix anything, but I needed to try. I'm sorry I took it. I'm sorry for everything. I slipped the ring on my finger, where it belonged. Where it should have stayed all along. The weight of it felt like restoration, like a piece of my history returned. I texted Lena. He got the ring back. It's home. Her response, good. So are you. The final supervised session happened on a rainy Tuesday. Ethan took the last of his boxes, his clothes, his few possessions. Marcus checked the house to confirm nothing of mine had been taken. All clear, he said. Mr. Chambers, you're finished here. Final walkthrough complete. Ethan stood in the entryway, looking around at the house he'd grown up in, the house his mother claimed, the house that was never actually his. Take care of it, he said to me. The house. Take care of it. I always have, I replied. He left. Marcus followed. And then it was just me, standing in my entry hall, listening to the rain on my roof, in my house, in my life that I'd rebuilt from the foundation up. I walked through each room one final time as the sole occupant. Living room, bright, open mine. Kitchen, clean and organized the way I liked it. Office, my desk back where it belonged, my equipment, my space. Bedroom, half empty now, but peaceful. No more tension. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending I was grateful for being erased. That evening, I sent out invitations. A small housewarming party. Nothing fancy, just good people celebrating a new beginning. The RSVPs came quickly. Lena, of course. Marcus and his wife. Several colleagues from work. Sarah from the pawn shop, who'd become a friend. Raina, who'd made this possible.
I cleaned, I cooked, I arranged flourish.
Not to impress anyone, but because I wanted to. Because this was my space to make beautiful. The night of the party, my home filled with laughter and warmth, and the kind of energy that comes from people who genuinely care about each other. No performance.
No pretense.
Just real connection. This place looks amazing, Lena said, glass of wine in hand. I can't believe it's the same house. It isn't, I said. Not really. It's mine now. Actually, truly mine. Raina pulled me aside at one point. I have something for you. She handed me an envelope. Final divorce decree. Signed, filed. Official as of yesterday. You're free, Clara. I opened it, saw my name, Clara Chambers, listed as petitioner, the decree granting dissolution, the property settlement executed. 3 years of my life, reduced to legal language. But also, 3 years of my life, finally acknowledged. Thank you, I said, and meant it for more than just the legal work.
For believing me. For fighting for me.
For treating my pain as valid and my claim as just. You did the hard part, Raina said. You documented everything, you held your ground, and you didn't let them rewrite your story. That takes courage most people don't have. As the party wound down and guests started leaving, Lena stayed to help clean up. So, what's next? She asked, loading the dishwasher. I don't know, I admitted. For the first time in years, I have no crisis to manage, no battle to fight, no one to prove myself to. I can just live. Sounds pretty good. It does. I looked around my kitchen, at the wine glasses drying on the rack, at the flowers still fresh in their vases, at the evidence of a good evening with good people. It really does. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I woke up on a Saturday morning to sunlight streaming through bare windows and realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd woken up afraid. For years, every morning had carried a low hum of anxiety. What would Margaret criticize today? What bill had I forgotten? What small freedom would be taken away? That anxiety had become so normal I'd stopped noticing it, like background noise you only hear when it stops. Now, in the silence, I could finally hear myself think. I made coffee in my quiet kitchen, sat at my table, and opened my laptop. The Household Systems app had launched 3 weeks ago and was already exceeding projections. I scrolled through user reviews, each one a small validation. This app showed me I was being financially abused. I'm getting help now. My partner and I finally have transparency. No more fights about money. I feel like I have control over my finances for the first time in my marriage. My pain had become useful. Not just cathartic, but genuinely helpful to others. That felt like alchemy, transforming suffering into something that prevented others from suffering the same way. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. I know I'm not supposed to contact you directly, but I needed to tell you something. I enrolled in a financial literacy course, and I'm seeing a therapist who specializes in enmeshed family dynamics. You were right about everything. I'm sorry it took losing you to understand. I hope you're happy. I stared at the message for a long moment. A year ago, those words would have meant everything. Now they were just words. Too late to change the past, but maybe early enough to help him build a better future. I typed back. I'm glad you're doing that work. For you, not for me. That's the right reason. Take care of yourself, Ethan. I didn't add anything else. Didn't leave the door open. Didn't soften the boundary. He needed to heal on his own timeline, for his own reasons, and I needed to live my life without wondering if he'd finally become the partner I'd needed. That afternoon, I drove to a storage facility across town. I'd been putting this off for weeks, but it was time. I unlocked Unit 237 and faced the boxes I'd hastily packed the night I'd stayed at Lena's, the night everything changed. I opened them one by one. Photo albums from the early days of my marriage, when we'd both been different people. Kitchen gadgets Margaret had given me, each one a small claim of territory. Cards from anniversaries and birthdays, written in Ethan's handwriting, full of promises he'd eventually broken. I didn't need most of it. The person who'd treasured these things didn't exist anymore. She'd evolved into someone who measured worth by what she built, not by what others gave or took away. I donated what was useful, shredded what was painful, kept only what mattered. A few photos, a quilt my grandmother had made, a journal from before the nightmare began when I'd still written about dreams instead of documenting abuse. On my way home, I stopped at the cemetery where my grandmother was buried. I hadn't visited in months. There'd been too much chaos, too much survival mode. Now, I sat on the grass beside her headstone and slipped her ring off my finger. I got it back, Gran, I said quietly. It took a while, but it's safe now. And so am I. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and late summer flowers. I stayed there for an hour, just being present, feeling the weight of everything that had happened and everything I'd become. When I got home, there was a package on my doorstep. No return address, just my name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Cautiously, I opened it. Inside was a small watercolor painting of a house. Not my house, but a symbolic one. Strong foundation, bright windows, a garden growing wild around it. And tucked in the corner, a note. Clara, I saw your app featured in a business magazine. I'm proud of what you've built from such a difficult experience. This painting is called Reclaimed. I thought you'd appreciate the title. Aunt Ruth. I hung it in my office, right above my desk where I could see it while I worked. A reminder that even in the worst situations, some people surprise you. Some people grow. Some people choose understanding over loyalty to dysfunction. The housewarming gifts kept coming in sporadic bursts. Colleagues sent plants. Lena brought over art she'd found at estate sales. Sarah from the pawn shop, now a genuine friend, gifted me a vintage mirror that she'd restored herself, saying, "Now you can see yourself clearly in your own home." I filled my space with things that meant something. Not expensive things, not status symbols, but pieces with stories. With intention. With joy. Work consumed me in the best way. The app's success led to speaking engagements, panels on financial transparency and relationships, workshops on recognizing financial abuse, keynotes at tech conferences about turning personal experience into impactful products. At one conference, a woman approached me during the networking session. She was in her 50s, well-dressed, confident. "I just wanted to thank you," she said. "Your app helped me realize I'd been subsidizing my adult son's lifestyle for 15 years. I thought I was being a good mother. Turns out I was enabling financial dependence. We're both in therapy now, and our relationship is actually better because I set boundaries." "That takes courage," I said. "So does what you did. I read your story, the interview in Forbes. Walking away from a marriage, fighting for your house, starting over. That's not easy." "Neither is facing 15 years of patterns and changing them," I replied. "We both did hard things. That's worth celebrating." She hugged me, this stranger who felt like a sister in arms, and I realized this was the legacy I was building. Not just an app, but a movement, a conversation, a permission slip for people to demand better. 6 months after the divorce, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Clara? It's Margaret." I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. "How did you get this number?" "Please don't hang up. I needed to talk to you. Just once. We have nothing to discuss. I know I don't deserve your time. But I've been in therapy, court-ordered, actually, because of the financial fraud charges that were dropped on condition I get help. And my therapist has been making me face some things. About myself.
About what I did to you."
I said nothing, waiting. "I was wrong," Margaret continued, her voice shaking. "About everything. I treated your home like it was mine. I took your money. I manipulated my son. I made you feel small because I was terrified of becoming irrelevant. And I'm
sorry.
I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But you deserved an apology, and I'm giving you one. That's all. I won't call again." The line went quiet, but she didn't hang up. Neither did I. Finally, I spoke. "Margaret, I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did caused real damage. Financial, emotional. To my marriage, to my sense of self. But I appreciate you saying it. I appreciate you facing it. That's more than a lot of people do." "It's not enough." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But it's a start. For you. For your own healing. I hope you keep doing the work." "I will. And Clara? What you built, the app, your career, your life, It's impressive. You were always stronger than Ethan, and I gave you credit for. That was our failure, not yours. Goodbye, Margaret. Goodbye. I set the phone down and sat very still. I didn't cry, didn't rage, didn't feel victorious. I just felt complete. The apology didn't erase the past, but it closed a chapter. It confirmed what I'd always known. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't wrong. I was just finally, blessedly free. That evening, I hosted a small dinner party. Not a housewarming this time, just a gathering of the people who'd become my chosen family. Lena and her partner, Marcus and his wife, Raina, Sarah, a few colleagues who'd become genuine friends. We cooked together, laughed together, shared stories. No one walked on eggshells. No one undermined anyone else. No one kept score. It was just easy. The way relationships should be. After dessert, Lena raised her glass. A toast to Clara, who took back her house, her life, and her power, and who's letting the rest of us crash her amazing space whenever we want. Everyone laughed and clinked glasses. I looked around the table, at these people who saw me, valued me, celebrated me, and felt something I'd been too afraid to feel for years. Contentment. Not the frantic happiness of trying to prove something or the desperate relief of avoiding conflict. Just genuine, sustainable contentment. The kind that comes from building a life that fits who you actually are, not who others needed you to be. Later, after everyone left, I stood on my front porch in the cooling evening air. The house behind me hummed with the quiet energy of a place that's truly home. Not because of its walls or its rooms, but because of the boundaries that protected it. The choices that defined it. The woman who'd fought for it. I thought about the Clara who'd moved in 3 years ago, hopeful, naive, willing to sacrifice herself for a peace that was never real. She'd believed that love meant accommodation, that family meant acceptance without question, that home was something other people gave you. She'd been wrong about all of it. Love meant respect. Family meant boundaries. And home was something you built yourself from the ground up, with your own hands and your own money and your own fierce insistence that you deserved to take up space. My phone buzzed. A notification from the app, a 5-star review from a new user. This app gave me the courage to ask questions I was afraid to ask. Thank you for creating it. Thank you for sharing your story. You saved me. I smiled and pocketed the phone. Somewhere out there, another person was choosing themselves. Another person was demanding transparency. Another person was learning that suffering didn't have to be silent. And it had started here, in this house, with a woman who'd finally learned to say no. To say mine. To say enough. I looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the deepening sky. The night was clear, full of possibility, stretching endlessly ahead. Here's to new beginnings, I whispered to the universe, to my grandmother, to the younger version of myself who needed to hear it. Here's to taking back what's yours. Here's to building something beautiful from the wreckage. A breeze picked up, warm and gentle, carrying with it the scent of jasmine from the garden I'd planted last month. My garden. My home. My life. I turned and walked inside, closing the door behind me, not running from anything, not hiding from anyone, just choosing peace. Choosing myself. Choosing forward. The lock engaged with its familiar click, solid and secure. Outside, the porch light glowed steady and bright, illuminating the address plaque I'd installed last week. A simple brass plate with numbers that meant everything. My address. My house. My story. And unlike the story they'd try to tell, where I was the guest, the burden, the problem, this story had a different ending. This story ended with a woman standing in her own light, in her own space, having fought for and won her own peace. This story ended with me, whole and free and finally home. I walked through my living room, turning off lights as I went, each switch a small act of ownership. In the bedroom, I changed into comfortable clothes and climbed into bed, my bed in my room, in my house. Before turning off the bedside lamp, I opened my old journal one last time. The document that had started as evidence, as protection, as proof, I wasn't imagining the abuse. I scrolled to the very end and typed one final entry. Today, I am free. The divorce is final. The house is mine. The life I'm building is mine. I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I know who brings it. Me. Strong, capable, unbreakable me. This is where the documentation ends and the living begins. To anyone who finds this someday, if you're documenting your own pain, know that it serves a purpose. It validates you when everyone else gaslights. It protects you when everyone else dismisses. And eventually, it helps you take back what was always yours. You're not crazy. You're not selfish. You are not wrong to demand respect in your own life. Fight for yourself. You're worth it. Signed, Clara Chambers. Homeowner. Survivor. Free woman. I saved the document, closed the laptop, and turned off the light. In the darkness, my house settled around me. The gentle creaks of wood, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of wind chimes on the porch. Not threatening sounds. Not anxious sounds. Just the sounds of a house at peace. And in that peace, I slept. Deeply, dreamlessly, safely. Home at last. 2 years later, I stood in front of a sold-out auditorium, about to give the keynote speech at the National Financial Wellness Summit. My app had become an industry standard. My story had been featured in major publications. And I'd become an unexpected advocate for financial transparency and healthy boundaries in relationships. But as I looked out at the sea of faces, people who'd traveled from across the country to hear about building better systems, better relationships, better lives, I didn't think about my success. I thought about the night I'd been locked out of my own house, the morning I'd been served breakfast by omission, the birthday that wasn't mine, the moment Ethan had shouted those words that became my wake-up call. Don't argue with my mother in her house. Those words had destroyed a marriage, but they'd also built something better. A woman who knew her worth, who demanded her due, who understood that real love never asks you to shrink. Good evening, I said into the microphone, my voice steady and strong. My name is Clara Chambers, and I want to tell you about the most expensive house I ever paid for, and how taking it back taught me everything about boundaries, worth, and what it really means to be home. The audience leaned forward, ready to listen. And I was ready to tell them. Not a victim story, not a revenge tale, but a story of reclamation, of restoration, of a woman who'd paid for her house in every sense and finally learned to live in it freely. The house that boundaries built, the life that courage claimed, the future that belonged, at last, entirely to me. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and subscribe for more stories about finding your power when everyone else wants you powerless. Thanks for watching.